Alright, are we getting some new expansion teams? Is there going to be a new team in Vegas? Is there going to be a new one in Seattle? Are we actually finally gonna get the Sonics back? Or is this just another ruse to break the hearts of us Seattleites who've waited so long for a team to finally return? Alright, so here's the deal. A while back I made a prediction video of all the things I thought would happen this year. And in one of those predictions, I suggested the NBA would announce they were not planning on expanding the league any further, keeping the number of teams at 30 and crushing the dreams of us Seattleites who've been waiting patiently for nearly 2 decades for our team to return. See, I thought the only chance there would be for the NBA to expand would happen immediately after the pandemic, because it would be a quick way for the league and its owners to make back all the money they lost during that season. They would of course be able to make this money back via the expansion fees the new owners would pay to add their teams to the league. Now for context, one of the main revenue generators for teams are ticket sales. Teams and the league on average make roughly 40% of their money from hosting games. And for the teams that aren't the Knicks, the Warriors, or the Lakers, more often than not, this can be the difference between being profitable or losing money at the end of the year. And in a year where fans were non-existent, a quick way to supplement that loss of money would have been through expansion fees by adding new teams. But given how long it's been since this all went down, the NBA has pretty much returned to normal, and in some circumstances, it's actually doing better than ever. There's still the occasional inconvenience of players having to sit out due to health and safety protocols, but for the most part, things feel about as normal as they ever have. Attendance is back to pre-pandemic levels, and TV ratings by many standards are exceeding where they once were. Not to mention how the pandemic actually forced the NBA to find new, creative ways to make money, like on-court dynamic ads and other forms of creative revenue generators that have become standard in the league today. So overall, given the current state of the NBA, I thought there was no longer an incentive to push for these expansion fees in the short term, seeing how well everything is going today, especially in exchange of the owners now having to share their revenues with 2 more teams. It also didn't help that the league seemingly shut down any hope for this to happen anytime the topic was brought up. Seriously, anytime Adam Silver was asked about the NBA's expansion, he would give an answer like this.
What would expansion hinge on?
There's 2 core issues. One is the economics, of course, and that if you expand, the way I think of the league, there are 30 teams, there are 30 shareholders, things get divided 1/32 instead of 1/30. So that's one way we look at it. I think the other is the competition on the floor. And yet, even with all the very best players in the world coming to this league, a game played by tens of millions of kids around the world, you still don't have the kind of competitive parity that we would like. You and I both know you could start the season and you could say there's a large group of teams that in all likelihood aren't going to win the championship. Or if you looked at a Vegas board or something, you'd see where the odds are. And if you expand, you're diluting talent even more. So nothing will happen in the short or medium term, but we'll turn back to it at some point.
So seeing all this, I didn't think expansion would happen, and so I predicted that the league would come out again and formally announce there were no plans to add any new teams. But recently, it looks like the opposite of my prediction has come true, or at least may be coming true. There have been some really promising signs that the league will in fact look to expand in the next few years. Now, this all started a few weeks back when an OG columnist out of Portland by the name of John Canzano did an interview with the local radio station here in Seattle. I actually interned there long time ago. Well, I didn't last very long there either, hence why I'm on YouTube. Now, in this article and interview, Canzano explains that he was initially inquiring about the potential sale of the Portland Trailblazers and Seattle Seahawks, both owned by the now late Paul Allen. But when asking an anonymous team president about whether the Blazers could be sold to an owner who would then move the team to Seattle, the anonymous president said this would be unlikely, due to the fact that the Seattle and Las Vegas have unofficially been earmarked for NBA expansion, and the current owners would prefer to avoid cannibalizing what would be a windfall of $6 billion in combined expansion fees. That's right. Per this unnamed team president, the current NBA owners would not approve for any teams to relocate to Seattle or Vegas because they're saving those cities for expansion. Canzano elaborated a bit more during his interview, stating that expansion will happen after the current media rights deal ends in 2024. There were also a number of similar stories I found which corroborate Canzano's findings about the league blocking any requests to move teams to either of those 2 cities. Per True Hoop, a number of teams were also considering relocating to Vegas, but it seems like they wouldn't be able to move there because the league is already planning on giving Vegas its own team. Henry Abbott, another reputable source, explained the reasoning behind why there is still motivation for the league to make this happen. Per Abbott, insiders say that behind the scenes, expansion has become one of the league's core plans to placate billionaires still chafing. Expansion has become one of the league's core plans to placate billionaires still chafing from losses of recent years. The pandemic hurt every aspect of business, especially in arena revenues, not to mention how the NBA lost hundreds of millions in international broadcast revenues following Daryl Morey's comments a few years back. And as if we didn't need more smoke, it also looks like both cities have planned to welcome teams already. Seattle recently renovated the stadium, which was previously home to the Sonics. Mind you, it was hesitancy around renovating the stadium back in 2008, which pushed the team out of the city in the first place. Well, that and the fact that the team just wasn't profitable. See, us Seattleites like to remember that last year that Sonics were here, like it was a historic season where we protested and sold out every game in an effort to show the league we wanted our team to stay. But in reality, during the Sonics' final season, no one was showing up to those games. The Sonics had the third lowest attendance in the league. The other issue was that Key Arena was just too small. Even if they were to sell out every game at 17,000 seats, it was by far and away the smallest arena in the league. It's also not just the number of seats to look at, but also everything else in the stadiums. The concession stands, the restaurants, the amenities, the lounges, the box seats, all generate revenues as well. And these were all things that Key Arena was lacking, and as a result, made the team very unprofitable. No one was ever mad at Howard Schultz, the then owner of the Sonics, for selling the team. He had every right to. Again, the team was losing a significant amount of money each year. The issue was who he sold it to, and the lack of due diligence that went into selling the team to a group of people who clearly wanted to relocate the franchise. But since then, the same arena has been renovated. They've managed to increase the capacity of basketball games by over 1,100 seats and added all the amenities, the box seats, and other revenue generators that were initially missing from the old Key Arena. And honestly, I'm not even trying to sound like a homer. It is one of the most beautiful stadiums I've ever been to. The first time I walked in there, literally my jaw dropped. It's crazy. It's crazy. And so now Seattle is fully equipped with a state-of-the-art stadium that can accommodate an NBA team and finally generating profits doing it. And I don't think they would have made that kind of investment if there wasn't a legitimate prospect of a team coming to Seattle. Las Vegas also recently announced that they will be building another stadium which will be able to accommodate an NBA team. Now, some of y'all might already be aware, there's already a stadium which was recently built in Vegas, thought to already be enough to accommodate an NBA team. But clearly, it's not enough by the NBA standards. Management of the Oakview Group, who are in charge of the recently developed Seattle Arena and are managing the development of the upcoming Vegas Arena, had this to say about their efforts. We're prepared to spend about $1 billion on building the new arena in Vegas. And should the NBA decide to come, we certainly will be NBA ready and will make sure to hit all of their standards. So alright, what does this all mean? Well, there's a lot of smoke in the air regarding the potential for new teams to join the league. The incentives are there, the logic is there, and the demand is clearly there. But, and maybe this is just me projecting a bit, I'm still not 100% convinced. There's still one thing I do want to keep tabs on. Now, the rumors suggest expansion will be announced in 2024, after the current TV deals expire. And this makes a lot of sense. By doing this, you can maybe even negotiate a higher price with broadcasters now that they have an extra 160 games to choose from. But there's something else that is set to expire at the same time, and that's the NBA's collective bargaining agreement. Under the current CBA, money from expansion fees are excluded from income that the owners are required to share with players, also known as BRI, or basketball related income. Multiple sources state that the league has unofficially set the price for expansion at $3 billion per team. So if the CBA rights deal and the expansion fees are all set to kick in at the exact same time, players have an incentive to potentially argue that they deserve to receive their share of the expansion money as well, potentially risking a lockout. And from my perspective, they have every right to do so. Now, I'm not confident this would actually happen. A lot would have to go right. And seeing how the previous collective bargaining agreements have gone, players would be lucky to keep everything they have right now, let alone anything new. This is of course dependent on when the expansion fees are collected. If the league manages to accelerate this process before the new CBA kicks in, this may be a non-issue, but this is something to at least keep an eye out for. Now, all this aside, let's assume everything goes as planned. Everything goes perfectly. What does this mean if I'm a Sonics fan or a Vegas Hoops fan? Well, for starters, don't hold your breath. This stuff takes time, like a lot of time. If everything goes perfect. I mean, everything goes perfectly. I wouldn't expect there to be teams playing basketball in either of these cities until, at a minimum, 2026. The last time we saw an expansion team announced in the NBA, it was the Charlotte Bobcats, who were announced in 2002 and didn't play their first game until 2 years later in 2004. This is also commonplace in other leagues as well, as it provides time for each city to prepare, develop staff, hire coaches, trainers, GMs, and gives competitors more time to reassess their rosters before losing players in the inevitable expansion draft. So if the rumors are true and the league was to announce teams after the 2024 media rights deal, this would mean it could take at least 4 years before we see any on-court action in Vegas or Seattle. Regardless, if history has told us anything, it's not to get our hopes up too high. We're creeping up on 2 decades since Schultz first sold the Sonics, and in every step of the way since, it's been disappointment after disappointment. Heartbreak after heartbreak, tease after tease. But aside from all this, there's also the fact that Seattle as a city has changed quite a bit. This isn't the same Seattle that was around when the Sonics first left. There have been drastic changes. Huge companies have started or moved here, the cost of living has skyrocketed, and it's become one of the fastest growing, higher income cities in the world. Seattle alone has the GDP of some European countries, and this will be reflected in the cost of attending these games. The Seattle Kraken, a much less popular team of a much less popular sport, who play in the same arena that the Sonics would return to, charge an average of $130 per ticket to attend a game. That's nearly double the league average. What was so beautiful about being a Sonics fan back in the day was how the team was a true reflection of the city. The crowd was as colorful and diverse as the city itself, but just as the economy has changed, so have the demographics of the people who can afford to live in the city and attend these games. And if you don't believe me, ask any Bay Area native, ask any Warriors fan. They've gone through a very similar change. So I have to be honest with myself. I know even if the Sonics come back, it won't be the same. Just like the Warriors, if they come back, most of the tickets are probably going to get eaten up by local companies or the few groups of people who can afford to pay the exorbitant ticket prices. So before, we couldn't go to games because there was no team for us. Now, we probably won't be able to go to games just because there won't be any tickets for us. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Just bring the Sonics back home. We'll figure the rest out later. Alright y'all, thank y'all so much for making it through another video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button, please hit that subscribe button. We're still building this up, and any support we can get is greatly appreciated. I appreciate y'all, for real. Have a great rest of your day. Love y'all. Peace.